What's going on, everyone? And welcome back. If you've been playing Project Ascension, Conquest of Azeroth, you've probably noticed something pretty quickly. Everybody seems to have a different opinion about what's actually strong. One player tells you their class is completely overpowered. Another says it's terrible. Then you jump into a dungeon, check the damage meter at the end, and somehow a class you've barely even seen ends up sitting comfortably at the top. That's honestly one of the coolest things about Conquest of Azeroth right now. The expansion introduces 21 brand new classes and nearly 70 different specializations. So we're still in that early stage where players are discovering better builds almost every single day. That also means the meta is changing constantly. So today's tier list isn't meant to be the final answer forever. Instead, this is based on the current performance of each specialization in raids, dungeons, and endgame content. As always, balance patches, new discoveries, and optimized builds can completely shake things up. So if your favorite spec isn't at the top today, don't panic. Things will almost certainly change over the next few weeks. With that out of the way, let's start with the absolute monsters. S tier, the meta definers. These are the specs that currently stand above the rest. They're capable of incredible damage, scale extremely well with good players, and consistently show up near the top of the logs. Demolition Tinker. We'll start with what is probably the biggest powerhouse in the current meta. Demolition Tinker. This specialization is all about explosive burst damage. You're constantly juggling bombs, gadgets, and cooldowns while trying to create one enormous damage window. And when everything lines up, the numbers become ridiculous. Now, this isn't exactly an easy spec. There's quite a bit of planning involved, and if you mistime your cooldowns or lose uptime during your burst, your overall damage drops pretty quickly. But players who master the rotation are producing some of the highest DPS we've seen so far. If your goal is simply topping the meters, Demolition Tinker absolutely deserves its place in S tier. Mechanic Tinker. The second Tinker specialization also earns a place in S tier, but for completely different reasons. Mechanic focuses less on huge explosions and more on sustained pressure through turrets, mechanical companions, and deployable gadgets. Instead of relying on one giant burst window, you're constantly building value throughout the fight. That makes the specialization incredibly consistent. Of course, there's still plenty of skill involved. Good positioning becomes extremely important. Knowing when to relocate your devices or prepare for boss movement separates average players from great ones. It's a technical class, but one that rewards mastery with fantastic results. Shadow Hunting Witch Doctor. Next up is one of the strongest ranged casters currently available. Shadow Hunting Witch Doctor has quickly become known for its consistency. Rather than relying on random procs, the specialization delivers reliable sustained damage through curses, shadow magic, and powerful spiritual abilities. The rotation feels smooth, satisfying, and surprisingly approachable despite having a respectable skill ceiling. It's especially strong during longer boss encounters where you have enough time to fully establish your damage. If your raid values consistency, this is one of the safest picks available. Infinity Chronomancer. Infinity Chronomancer might be one of the most interesting classes in the entire expansion. Manipulating time to increase your own damage is simply a cool concept. Thankfully, the gameplay actually delivers on that fantasy. The specialization rewards players who carefully manage cooldowns and execute a clean rotation. It doesn't rely heavily on luck. Instead, your success depends on precision. That's why experienced Chronomancer players consistently produce impressive logs. It isn't flashy. It's simply reliable. And sometimes that's exactly what progression groups need. Wild Walking Primalist. Wild Walking Primalist is a little different. Its average damage is already very respectable, but what really makes it stand out is its ceiling. When your cooldowns line up perfectly and your procs cooperate, this specialization can produce some of the biggest burst windows in the game. Those moments are incredibly satisfying. The downside is consistency. Some fights feel amazing. Others feel average. But if you enjoy chasing huge numbers and don't mind a little unpredictability, Wild Walking Primalist is an excellent choice. Engravement Runemaster. Rounding out S tier is Engravement Runemaster. This is easily one of the strongest melee DPS specs right now. The gameplay revolves around empowering your weapons with magical runes before unleashing devastating attacks. Managing resources correctly is everything. The better your timing, the harder you hit. It's rewarding, engaging, and offers one of the highest burst ceilings among melee classes. Now we move into A tier. These specs may not completely dominate the logs, but they're still fantastic choices capable of clearing every piece of current content. Infernal Fellsworn. Infernal Fellsworn is probably one of the most consistent damage dealers available. The rotation flows naturally. Your abilities always seem to have something meaningful to contribute. Whether you're fighting one enemy or several, Infernal performs well in almost every situation. It's one of those classes that's simply hard to go wrong with. Slayer Fellsworn. Slayer takes a more aggressive approach. Everything feels faster. You're constantly attacking, managing resources, and looking for the next burst opportunity. It's a more active playstyle than Infernal, and while its damage fluctuates slightly more, it's incredibly enjoyable to play. If you enjoy high-action melee combat, Slayer won't disappoint. Zealot Templar. Sometimes simple is exactly what players need. Zealot Templar has one of the smoothest rotations in Conquest of Azeroth. It's easy to learn, difficult to master, and consistently delivers strong damage without overwhelming new players. That's a combination that's hard not to recommend. Crusader Templar. Crusader shares many similarities with Zealot, but introduces a little more randomness through critical strikes and holy procs. When everything aligns, your burst damage becomes extremely impressive. You sacrifice a little consistency, but gain much higher highs. Some players absolutely love that style. Maelstrom Stormbringer. If visual effects matter to you, Maelstrom Stormbringer is incredible. Lightning crashes everywhere. Elemental magic fills the screen. Thankfully, the gameplay is just as enjoyable. It excels during cleave encounters where multiple enemies allow your elemental effects to spread naturally. A fantastic all-around specialization. Lightning Stormbringer. Lightning Stormbringer trades sustained pressure for explosive burst. You're constantly hoping for overloads, critical strikes, and chain reactions. When those mechanics activate together, the results are spectacular. It's slightly less consistent than Maelstrom, but significantly more explosive. Rot Venomancer. Rot Venomancer focuses entirely on sustained damage over time. Instead of blowing enemies up immediately, you're infecting them with multiple poisons and diseases that continue dealing damage throughout the encounter. This makes movement-heavy fights much easier since your damage continues ticking even while repositioning. It's one of the most reliable specializations in the game. Stalker Venomancer. Stalker takes those same poison mechanics and transforms them into a fast-paced assassin playstyle. You're constantly weaving in and out of combat while looking for opportunities to eliminate priority targets. Its single-target pressure is excellent, making it particularly valuable during boss encounters. Artifact Chronomancer. Artifact Chronomancer probably has one of the highest skill ceilings in the game. Proper cooldown management is absolutely essential. The class feels difficult at first, but incredibly rewarding once mastered. Players willing to invest the time can produce some surprisingly strong results. B tier, still great choices. Now, before anyone gets upset because their class landed in B tier, remember something important. B tier does not mean bad. Not even close. Conquest of Azeroth currently has excellent class balance overall. These specs are still perfectly capable of clearing endgame content. Brigand Ranger. Brigand Ranger is built around mobility. You're constantly repositioning, placing traps, and combining ranged attacks with quick melee abilities. The damage is steady. The gameplay feels fluid. And it's easily one of the most enjoyable classes for players who dislike standing still. Archery Ranger. Archery Ranger delivers exactly what you'd expect. Massive ranged attacks. Excellent precision. Strong single-target damage. Finding good positioning becomes a huge part of maximizing your performance. Players who enjoy the classic archer fantasy will feel right at home here. Glyphic Runemaster. Finally, we have Glyphic Runemaster. Rather than focusing entirely on personal DPS, this specialization provides utility while still contributing respectable damage. It's a thoughtful, tactical playstyle that rewards good positioning and encounter knowledge. You may not always top the charts, but your team will definitely appreciate having you. Overall, I'd say Conquest of Azeroth is in a surprisingly healthy place. Considering there are nearly 70 specializations available, the balance is actually much better than many people expected. Yes, there are obvious standouts. Demolition Tinker and Shadow Hunting Witch Doctor are clearly among the strongest right now. But the gap between many of these specs is much smaller than people think. A skilled player on an A or B tier class will often outperform someone blindly following the meta. So my biggest piece of advice is this. Pick something you genuinely enjoy. If you love the class fantasy, if you enjoy the rotation, if you're having fun playing it, you're far more likely to master it than constantly re-rolling every time a new tier list comes out. And remember, we're still in the early days of Conquest of Azeroth. Balance changes are coming. New builds are being discovered every week. The meta will evolve. This list is simply where things stand today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more Conquest of Azeroth guides, and let me know down in the comments what class you've been playing and whether you agree with these rankings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.